Hi everyone and welcome. It's Melissa from Endo Empowered, and today what I want to talk about is hormones, hormone imbalances, why they happen, and some ideas and suggestions on things that you can do to support yourself. So feel free to jump in if you have any questions, anything that you'd like to ask me along this live session. If there are topics that you want me to cover, also mention that. You can do that inside the group if you don't feel comfortable, or send me a private message and I'll be happy to go through any topics that you might need some guidance on. Okay, so I'm just going to jump over to our demonstration. All right, so the first thing I guess that we need to look at is what is going on with your hormones. So typically with endometriosis, there's a couple of common scenarios that happen. The first most obvious thing is something called estrogen dominance. So basically there are too many of the estrogens in the body and there's not enough progesterone. So what tends to happen is there's kind of like the seesaw. If you imagine a seesaw, and on the one end you've got estrogen and on the other end you've got progesterone. Now this is very simplified. There are various different types of estrogens. There's different influences that happen in the body. So, obviously I'm trying to simplify this for you, but know that there are different types. Now, this is the common scenario that happens with endometriosis. So you have this elevation of estrogen, and what's supposed to happen in the body is it's supposed to kind of sit somewhere in the middle. So it actually doesn't matter how high your estrogen is, as long as the progesterone is in correlation to that estrogen. So basically you want to have them kind of sitting on opposite ends of each other. So there's different ways of achieving that, and typically the way that I like to achieve it is to work from both angles. So what I tend to do is I try and bring down the level of estrogens, and essentially the key focus here is to bring down the xenoestrogens. Now xenoestrogens are basically estrogens that are kind of like they mimic estrogens in the body, and they're not natural estrogens. So these are things that are in our environment. They're things that they act like estrogens, but they're not real. So they have the same effect on the body, but they're not real. And if you expose yourself to a lot of those kinds of things, then your estrogen levels will go up. So the first port of call is to lower these. So these are things that act like estrogen. So things that contain dioxins or have dioxins in them. And I've talked about dioxins in a previous one of these. So if you haven't watched that, have a look at that. Basic things that you're possibly already aware of is to avoid eating foods that are made in plastic, drinking out of plastic bottles, toxins, in your environment, chemicals that essentially are xenoestrogens. So these are the main ones. Dioxin is the key one. And that's the one that's been attributed to monkeys developing endometriosis. There's a study done where these monkeys developed endometriosis from being exposed to dioxin. So obviously that's a key connection here that we need to be making. Now what happens is these guys, there is like a spot in the body, like a little location where estrogens can plonk themselves, so there's various little receptor sites is what they're called, where these estrogens can sit. And when you have natural estrogens in that spot, they do a little bit of action in the body. So they have a little action in the body. But when you have a xenoestrogen in that same spot, it's like a heightened elevation. So basically that that estrogen is like, you know, the Superman of estrogens, and it overreacts. So it can be the reason for this elevation over here. So this is the one side of the action that you want to be taking, is to drop these xenoestrogens in your exposure and to get them out of your body. And we'll get to that a little bit later. The other side of things that you want to do is you want to increase the natural progesterone production in your body. So we're working at this from the two different angles. So we want to lower the xenoestrogens predominantly, and we want to increase the progesterone so that we can get this back to a normal balance. Now, to increase progesterone in the body, obviously we can go with a progesterone cream, which has been suggested by quite a few people. I myself am not a huge fan of that unless it's for just a short-term kind of, let's just try and fix this, but then look at the underlying reasons as to why your hormones are out of balance. Because it's all good and well to use progesterone cream, but we have to understand, why is this imbalance happening in the body? If we don't address that, we're always going to have that imbalance, and we're going to be basically taking progesterone cream forever. That is not solving the problem. That is looking at a symptom, which is not my approach to the body. So yes, you can use progesterone cream, and maybe if there's a lot of estrogen, like heightened levels of estrogen in your body, then that can help. I do want to just say that it doesn't help all women. So some women actually experience, what can happen is that these progesterones can convert themselves into estrogen. The body is perfectly capable of doing that. So just to be aware that if you've tried progesterone cream and it hasn't worked for you, it could be what's going on. Not in all cases, and yes, you know, overall progesterone is something that can help women, but just to be aware that that can happen. Looking at this deeper, however, we need to ask ourselves, well, why is your progesterone level low? And there's a couple of reasons this can happen. The first one is actually progesterone levels being low. The first one is actually going on the pill. So if you've been on the pill, you've recently come off the pill, it takes the body a little while to build up natural levels of progesterone again. So this can take a little bit of time. You know, if you've been on the pill, you've got to try and build up the progesterone naturally. When you're on the pill, progesterone is completely shut off. And what also tends to happen when you come off the pill is that estrogen shoots right up. So that, estrogen shoots right up, and that essentially means that you've got that imbalance happening all over again. So this can be a big factor. The other factor, which I think a lot of us underestimate, is feeling stressed, feeling anxiety. All of these kinds of things play havoc massively in your progesterone levels being low. And the reason this happens is you've got a certain amount of molecules to make hormones with. And there are a bunch of hormones that your body needs to make. Now, when you're stressed out, you use up more cortisol. And cortisol will steal all these molecules. So there's not much left for the progesterone, which it still needs to make. But when you're stressed, it's going to go, well, hang on a second, I need these for the cortisol instead. So all of that goes to cortisol, and this poor little guy misses out. So what we want to do is lower our stress levels. Now, obviously there are stresses in life that happen, but it's all about how we perceive that stress and how we cope with that stress. So we can choose how we react to situations that happen to us. And oftentimes when you overreact to something, it is because of a previous experience or a feeling about yourself. And I call these stress triggers that are related not necessarily to the event, but an emotion or a feeling that you have about yourself or your life experiences. And when we work on those, it's amazing how we just cope with things better. So we want to free those stress triggers or underlying emotional pain from the body. And there are different ways of doing that. So we do cover this in much more depth in our program. So if that's something that you want to explore, you can certainly do that. So that is the stress levels and reducing that. So once we do this, it's amazing how just doing those few things can get your hormone balance back. Obviously, we want to dive deeper. So we want to look at, well, why are your hormone levels out of balance? So there are lots of different reasons, but a lot of the time it is simply that there is a nutrient deficiency for your body to actually make those hormones. So your body needs certain things, and if you don't have those things, it can't produce enough of those hormones. If you, for instance, are low on the B vitamins, then you will struggle with stress a lot more. And if you are stressed, you need to supplement more with B vitamins because your body goes through them a lot more quickly. So that is one example. Now, coming back to my first statement about the estrogens, what we want to focus on in terms of rebalancing the body and things that we want to do. Okay, so working through my REACH technique, we've got replenish, which is about making sure you're getting the right nutrients in your body. And this also applies to supplements you want to take that your body might need, and avoiding things that are potentially contributing to hormone imbalances. Now, this is somewhat of a debate in the community of naturopaths and women who work within this area. Is I actually don't recommend phytoestrogens. So phytoestrogens are things like flax seeds, red clover, and evening primrose oil. I don't recommend them because the idea behind them is that they are supposed to replace that receptor site. So you know how we had that xenoestrogen in there? The idea is that they kick that guy out and they put a weaker, they call them a weaker plant estrogen in there. I don't believe it quite works that way. I think it can do that for a period of time, so maybe over 3 months. But then long term, I think it actually contributes to more estrogens. This is my opinion. I have yet to find exact research to prove this theory, but there are many women who agree with me on this idea. So that is our first port of call. So we want to first replenish what might be missing, what your body is lacking, things that it is doing where it is struggling because it doesn't have the resources essentially to build hormones in the right way. Okay, so that's replenish. Then we move on to exercise. And this is really about sweating it out. So those xenoestrogens that are causing all those issues, we want to get them out of the body. And there's different ways of doing that. So sweating is a key one. And yes, you can use exercise, but you can also use saunas, just even a warm bath, that kind of thing. There's lots of different techniques to actually sweat these out of the body. When it comes to exercise, you also want to incorporate something like yoga, which actually reduces your stress and anxiety in the body. So that comes back to our progesterone. So building that up, progesterone, and this all kind of obviously all plays into each other. Next, we want to look at the affirm side of things, and this is to do with lowering stress, and particularly those stress triggers. So actually freeing emotional pain from the body. So your body remembers things. It holds emotions in your cells. So every single time any kind of event happens in your life that reminds you of something that happened in the past that you still have pain over, it will trigger a stress response. And that's why we need to get rid of that pain, that associated feeling that you're holding in your body, to get rid of that. So when another event happens that even reminds you of that event, you don't have any emotional pain on that. And there's lots of different techniques to do this, but you want to use techniques to free this emotional stuff from your body, because that is ultimately a big reason for a lot of the pain you're experiencing and the hormone imbalances. So we want to drop all that anxiety you might be feeling as well. Obviously, you can use things like meditation, being present, being creative, all those kinds of things also help. But I believe you need to really look at what's happening there on a deeper level. And then, of course, we look at cleanse. And cleanse is really about flushing out those xenoestrogens. Xenoestrogens. Okay, so how can we get rid of these xenoestrogens? This is a big topic, so I'm going to try and cover it, but essentially you're looking at your liver health, making sure your liver is functioning optimally to actually get rid of this. So your liver's job is to flush out hormones, and if your liver is not able to do that, well, you're not going to successfully get rid of them. And there are some supplements that can help, but you want to get your liver to work. Then you look at your digestive health. Now, if your digestion is not working well, you could have all the wonderful liver supplements in the world, and they will send out these xenoestrogens and say, yep, the liver's done its job. It now wants to get rid of those xenoestrogens, so it wants to expel them from your body through your digestive system. But if your digestive system is not working, if you're constipated or you're not going often enough, well, all that happens is your liver sends it to the digestive system. Digestive system's blocked up. There's a delay there. And guess what happens? Oops. This simply goes back into your bloodstream and goes back to the liver. And so they never actually leave your body. And this is why I don't use progesterone creams. This is why I am not a fan of using phytoestrogens, because this function between these two guys needs to be optimal for anything that you're doing in terms of flushing out xenoestrogens to be effective. If you're not going to the loo and getting rid of those xenoestrogens, everything else is irrelevant. So this comes back to obviously diet, but it also comes back to looking at what's going on with your digestive health. Is there inflammation going on there? Is there restriction going on there? There's like a heap of things that could be going on there. There could be fungal overgrowth, bacterial overgrowth, things that are contributing to poor digestive health. So basically, I think I've covered everything that I could say on hormone imbalance, and I hope this all makes sense to you. If you have any questions on this, please feel free to shoot me a question underneath this video, or PM me, or in the group. Feel free to ask questions about this. It's a big topic, and I've tried to kind of condense it in a shorter space of time as I can. There's a lot here, so if you're struggling with hormone imbalance, know that it is not just a simple thing of, oh, I'll just take a supplement and everything will be okay. I wish it was that easy. There's a lot of things going on here, as you can see, and there's lots of components to getting it right. If you really want to try just a simple supplements to try and level it out, you could try Progesterone Cream. You could try something like Damiana, which actually stimulates progesterone in the body, so that can help. But it is kind of a temporary fix. It's not really resolving the deeper reason why you have hormone imbalances going on in your body. So I encourage you to look deeper and to understand your body, and that's, kind of what I do. So yeah, that's kind of the goal of the work that I'm sharing and the intention behind what I create, because I'm not just about symptom solving. I'm really about resolving what's going on for you. So Has anyone got any questions, anything they want to ask me around this topic? Are you currently struggling with hormone imbalances? Is there something that you are particularly wanting to know about? I have covered kind of the main ones, but I know there are lots of different hormone imbalances that can happen. So you could have too much testosterone, you could have low DHEA levels, you could have all sorts of things going on. So obviously, you know, these things that I've shared with you will all help contribute to correcting that, because we're addressing everything at once. We're not just focusing on one particular area, we're looking at the whole body. So naturally, things do tend to correct themselves naturally that way. But yeah, so if you have questions, now's the time to ask. If you don't feel comfortable sharing right now, feel free to pop me a private message or send me a question in the group. I'll post this up there as well. And thank you so much for everyone who's joined us today and for your support, and look forward to seeing you next week. Okay, bye.